I thought there was the disclosure.
Hello, my name is Isabella Perez, Recreation Leader for the City of Socorro. Thank you for joining today's meeting. Before the meeting begins, we would like to remind our guests to remove all hats and silence all electronic devices. No destructive behavior or outbursts will be tolerated, and violators are subject to ejection and possible prosecution.
Hola, mi nombre es Judy Rodríguez, secretaria de Planificación de la Ciudad de Socorro. Gracias por participar en la reunión de hoy. Antes de que comience la reunión, nos gustaría recordarles a nuestros invitados favor de quitarse los sombreros y silenciar todos los dispositivos electrónicos. No se tolerará ningún comportamiento perturbador ni exabrupto y los infractores estarán sujetos a expulsión y posible procesamiento.
It is 8:06 a.m. This meeting is called to order. Item number 2, Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Item number 3, Establishment of Quorum.
Ruben Reyes.
Yes.
Cesar Nevares.
Here.
Alejandro Garcia.
Here.
Mayor Ivy Avalos.
Here.
Rudy Cruz is absent, and Ivan Colombia Lobos.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Item number 4, Public Comment.
Carol. No speakers, Mayor, for public comment.
Thank you. Moving on to presentations, item number 5, workshop and discussion and action on FY 2023 through 2024 budget for all City of Socorro departments, including revenue projections for fiscal year 2023 through 2024.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. My name is Charlie Casiano. I'm the Finance Director for the City of Socorro. I hope that didn't surprise any one of you. So, we're here for the most exciting part of the year. We're going to talk about the budget. I know we're all very excited to talk numbers and all this money and all this good stuff. So, what I thought I'd do is start with the challenges. Now, the challenges are like threefold for this year. First of all, we're still living under SB2, which is stands for Senate Bill number 2, which was passed back in 2019 and has affected us since 2020. What this bill did was kind of restructured how municipalities could raise their taxes in subsequent years. In the good old days, they had something called a rollback rate. And that rollback rate was basically a way to increase your tax rate by about 8%. 8% is a very healthy percent, but you could do it without having to go to the voters at this point. Now, they changed the name of it, and now it's called the voter approval rate. And the percentage that they're using is lower. It's only 3.5%. So basically, we get our numbers and we can say, well, we can increase up to 3.5% before we have to go to the voters to say, yeah, it's okay. You can increase whatever you decide. But at the voter approval rate, we can increase 3.5% and not have to get an election done. So the other nomenclature that they dealt with was was known as the effective rate, and it's a rate that would go forward into the next year that would not necessarily increase revenue. And now it's called the no new revenue tax rate. Well, what has happened here in Socorro is that the property values have gone up about 10%, and new development has increased the tax base about 20%, 10%. So we have a combined increase for this year of about 20%. And what we did is we sent our preliminary values that we got from the Central Appraisal District, and we sent them to the city of El Paso and had them crunch the numbers for us so that they could come up with a no new revenue rate and a voter approval rate. Well, currently our rate, let me see if I can find that real quick. Our current rate is 0.7654920. You don't have to remember all the way to the 20, but it's about 0.76. Well, the no new revenue rate is at 0.9. The voter approval rate is at 0.60. So we're the good news is the values in Socorro are going up. What we have to deal with is, because of the legislature, because of what we're dealing with, the rate is being pushed down so that we're not taxing the citizens at a ridiculous rate and bringing in a ton of revenue off of their backs. That's one of the challenges. The other challenge is that in funding the Nuevo Hueco Tax Road extension, we're using TRZ number 2, which is Ordinance 324, dated December 12th, 2013. So this was set in place. Now we're using this TRZ to fund and pay for the extension from where Nuevo Hueco Tax Road is here down to Alameda, which is a great idea. And we could finance it many different ways. But what was decided back in 2013 is that we're going to use this TRZ to fund it. Now we're using the Camino Real Regional Mobile Authority to administer this project for us. But the reason I bring it up now is that this is also, one of the cons to using a TRZ is that it kind of limits your maintenance and operation funds for that time. Because as you know, the increment, we freeze the values at a certain time, which was December 12, 2013. And now any increases there go to the TRZ rather than us. So we're dealing with that, also limiting what we can bring in taxes. So the good news is that we're going to fund that project. I think we're going to do pretty well and pretty easily cover that cost through the TRZ and not have to look for additional funding somewhere. Already we have over $3 million that is in the coffers at the CRRMA on our behalf. So those are the highlights with the lowlights thrown in there as well. Now, Victor's brought up this first schedule that I'd like to go through, just to kind of remind everybody how the calculation works. In the comment section, the Central Appraisal District, in their preliminary totals on 5/31/23, the total assessed value before any exemptions and all this other stuff that they subtract is over $2 billion. And just as an aside, when I started working here, it was less than $1 billion that we dealt with. It was a big deal when we made it to $1 billion. And in like a blink of an eye, we're already at $2.164 billion. So that'll show you the extent of the growth. And it also explains why the rate is going down as well. So what we are going to use just for right now, because we don't have the final totals from the appraisal district are due to us on July 25th, 2023. And then we'll use those numbers, we'll give them to the city, and they'll crunch the values again for us. And that'll be what we eventually use. But for right now, for our discussions, we're going to use what they did with the preliminary numbers. And I'm using an estimated value of $1.78 billion for our taxable amount. And that's with all the credits, all the exemptions taken out. And the other thing that's very prevalent, in fact, not just this year, but in prior years, is that people are protesting their values. So that's kind of an estimate of the protest values going down as well. But we're coming up with this, we're using, so you know, is the voter approval rate. It's the higher of the two. So it doesn't need to go to an election. That will give us a combined total revenue of almost a little under 11 million, about 10.7, 10.8. And then we need to be cognizant of the fact that since we have general obligation bonds out, they, as creditors, are first in line to get our tax money. Okay, so that the first thing that that is calculated is how are we going to take care of our debt service or pay back the loans that we have outstanding, and that's about 2.3 million in this coming fiscal year. The rest of it there is going to be for maintenance and operations. And so that number is going forward into the general fund in our schedules. I did talk about the debt service, so if we can go to the debt service just real quick. I put together these lovely schedules and I thought I'd show them at least. That is what we're going to be paying in the next fiscal year, just by code. You can see there's the Texas Water Development Board that's in there, and it's not a mistake that it's just principal. We are not paying any interest on that. So that's fantastic from my perspective. Not paying interest. Interest is a bad word, when you're paying it. Good word when you're receiving it. So we're in pretty good shape there. If you go to the debt service rate calculation, okay, they have kind of changed how we do it, but basically what I'm showing you there, gosh, you can make that bigger. There you go. All right. So what we're looking at though is a debt service rate of about 0.11. So that's also coming forward to the next schedule. The next schedule is a kind of a comparison. The first one where it says fiscal year 2024, no change, is this if the rate did not change. If the rate did not change, we're using a rate of 0.765492. Okay, if we had that, we'd have to take it to the voters because that would generate so much revenue that it was beyond the 3.5%. Just keep that in mind. But then the next two, the next one to the right of it says fiscal year no new revenue rate of 0.595, and then the one next to it is the voter approval rate, which is what we're using for the schedules, and that's what we're recommending is that we use the voter approval rate of 0.60. Now that can change when we get the final numbers, and it always has, and so. But the bottom line is going to generate somewhere probably just a little less than $9 million for the M&O, and then of course take care of the debt service. Any questions so far?
Ms. Villalobos?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, you just answered the question of the voter approval, the 0.606613. That was one of my questions. The other one, did you see where yesterday it was in the news where HB 897, SB 826, homeowners property tax credit qualify for a certificate of, it's an application and certificate where if you're disabled or, obviously I'm looking at you and you probably don't know about this, it's a tax credit. to
Okay.
disabled and the elderly, or on a fixed income for Social Security, would be they passed where they're going to give you a tax credit. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know about that specifically. I do know that the Central Appraisal District keeps that stuff at the tips of their fingers. And when they give us that final in 725, that's going to include their prediction of how, bring down our values. And that's what we use. They take care of that for us. So
Okay.
I think we'll be cognizant of that, but,
When it just came out yesterday, and I did have somebody calling me and asking me, how is that gonna help me, because they're worried because they're on a fixed income.
right, and those are great credits, my father's a veteran, so he has no property tax. But even if that value comes down, well, that means the rate's gonna come up a little bit. So we're gonna kind of meet in the middle, one way or the other at this point. So it's not going to affect us that much, that we need to change policy or anything like that.
Right.
So it's just kind of understanding that the Central Appraisal District will take that into account, and when they give us the numbers in a couple of weeks, they'll probably have factored that in to the values that they give us. So.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Olarte?
Yes, and the comment that I wanted to do is was the legislative session that won't affect you till the next fiscal year.
Oh, so it's
Right,
not
so
this
things
year?
that take into effect, you won't see that till next fiscal year. Right, that's when they incorporate, right, it's in effect September, but these numbers are generated based on the last year, right? So that's kind of what we're seeing this year. So then for next year, that's when you're gonna see that impact.
Real quick, it does say at the end, effective June 1st, but it doesn't
Yeah.
have a year.
Yes, but, so the tax worksheets, right, so we're receiving the preliminaries, but that's based on like on what was said
Okay,
and the rules that were in effect at that time.
time, okay, gotcha.
Mr. Garcia?
Talking about the future, I know on the Texas Ledger right now, they have something that they're gonna extend a homestead exemption. How would that affect us for next year's budget if they extend the homestead exemption?
Again, what the homestead exemption does is reduce the taxable value. Okay, so that value is going to go down. But if that value goes down, the offset is that our rate can come up a little bit. And so we'll probably be able to increase again at 3.5%. It's just a slightly smaller number.
So it just offsets?
It's kind of an offset, it really is.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
So continuing, this is the general fund revenues. Looking at it, with the preliminary numbers. And just keep in mind that I'm super conservative when it comes to revenue projections. I'm gonna put it in there pretty low. And now, if you were paying attention last week, I think we had 2.3 million in sales tax for 2022 fiscal year. So I only put in 2.1. So I think that's gonna be. I'm gonna have to fess up on that one and probably put a bigger number in there. I just wanted to confess publicly about that. But overall, what we're looking at is increases in the sales tax. I think they mentioned that the inflation rate is up, but also I think there's a lot more buying locally than there was, because during the pandemic, we did not lose any sales tax revenue. In fact, it grew. And I think I need to point that out. I'm not sure why, but I just feel good about it. So we're kind of trending a little lower in building permits and also in muni court judgments. And we've had some fantastic years with that, with the amnesty and all this other stuff. It's kind of flattening out a little bit. But we can make up for it, again, with the sales tax. And we're also looking at, if you look at interest earned, last year's budget was just $5,000. Now we're trending much higher as we're putting most of our excess cash right now into the Logic pool and earning, over 4% in interest. And so that's going to help the bottom line for us. And right at this point in time, we're looking at dipping into the reserves by $917,000. Okay? So if we can go to the next, which is the combined. Okay. Not that one, I'm sorry. Keep going. It'll say, yeah. Keep going. Yeah, that one. If you could make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so we talked about what we're using to calculate the revenues. And then into the right. So we talked about what we use to calculate the revenues. Now we're going to look at the expense side. Now keep in mind we're using the voter approval rate. Okay. We did not include a cost of living adjustment in this preliminary budget here. So what I thought I'd do is present to you a couple scenarios, or three scenarios actually. If we included a cost of living adjustment of 2%, we would probably be increasing the budget about $140,000. If we were to increase it 3%, it would be about $210,000 increase in the budget. Now, as you probably know, the Social Security cost of living adjustment was 8.7%, as inflation has been rampant in the last few years. And so if we were to increase about 8%, we're looking at $560,000 of an increase to the budget, which would increase the prior year's revenue that we're dipping into the reserves to provide. Now, that's going to be something for you to tell us what you want to do, what you think is fair to do going forward to this next year. Also, we're looking at a 10% increase in the health insurance premiums, and that's included in here. As you can see on the line where it says health insurance premiums, it went from 1.184 million to 1.332. Okay. Where are we at? Okay, so some of the other items that we're looking at, and to be honest with you, this is probably the most modest necessities list that we've had since I've been here. So in the city manager's department, we're looking at a change from a city auditor to bringing in a deputy city manager. And that increase, the difference in salary between the city auditor and the deputy city manager, is about $58,000. It's the very top line there. Okay, good. And bringing in a custodian at about $42,000. And that includes all the benefits and everything to the bottom line. We're also looking at cleaning the ponds. The ponds are always a little bit of a thorn in the side, because when they look nice, but when they get all weedy and stuff, everybody's going to complain about it. And so we're looking at a contract at maybe having some outside services come in there and take care of the ponds once a year, and we're looking at about $134,000 for that, and that's included in the budget. Also, the police, again, and this has got to be like a record low for the police request, about $57,000 in all kinds of different things, body cameras, ammunition, and the like, and that's included in the budget. For animal control, an additional $7,000, because we have an administrative assistant, but she's not good about just sitting down and doing nothing all day. She wants to go out there and help, and so she can have a dual role, and to pay for that, an additional $7,000. We're looking at also for the city clerk's office an open records software to help deal with the open records requests, and that's about $15,000. And then information technology is always asking for something, and they want some money for travel, and uniforms. And they're also asking for, really, actually, this is very much needed, is the additional cameras. And the Verkada that we have, they work great, you know, because those of us that use them from time to time, you know, it's just very clear. Just, you couldn't ask for more. So that's kind of the necessities list, and that kind of brings us kind of to the end of my presentation. So if there's... go ahead.
Before moving on, I know that in the city managers, we also need to add the custodian. However, that's not gonna, okay, you did put the custodian, I didn't hear you talk about it, but.
I mentioned the custodian. I'd like to play back the tape.
But the custodian will serve our admin and the police, all the buildings in the police. And we will be reducing the service contracts in the police, because right now we have a temp service. So we'll reduce that amount and then put it in our salaries.
Ms. Villalobos?
So you mentioned the deputy city manager, auditor, right?
Well, we have a position, the city auditor, and we have tried to fill that position since that person left right after the audit last year, and we have not been successful in doing it. And so we're trying to think outside of the box and maybe have a deputy city manager that can also help with some of the city auditor, just to have, and maybe we can fill the position kind of sideways that way.
I'm just, okay. The thing is that, because it says city manager, you know, that would confuse a lot of people. And your role stays, and you have somebody under you, a deputy city manager?
Correct. So the city of El Paso has, I think, 7 or 8 deputy city managers under the city manager. I think the city's growing into, and we have multiple projects. That doesn't allow me to be in every meeting because we're handling, so this person would come in and assist with those type of meetings, maybe, you know, oversee some of the projects. And we also want to add some of the auditing duties and being able to help the finance department by reconciling and all of that. So we were trying to create a position that if anyone leaves, like that person would be able to continue.
Okay, and then that person would also need an assistant?
No, ma'am, we're not requesting an assistant.
No, just, it would be,
Just the,
it's a change, really. It's like the city auditor is going to morph into the deputy city manager. The city auditor to the deputy city
So
manager.
the city
duty.
auditor position was vacant, then we changed it to the financial analyst. Unfortunately, the applications that we receive are not strong enough in order for us to make a hire. So what we're asking is to convert the city auditor position to the deputy city manager. So city auditor would go away. And you would hire a deputy city manager.
Okay, so, so that position that you're eliminating was 42 a year, right? Is that what you were saying?
It was in that neighborhood probably
Right, okay.
at just the salary.
But by hiring a deputy city manager, the salary would increase to 58.
No.
No, so
No.
you're increasing the 42 plus the 58 in order to bring a deputy city manager.
They,
Based on
they don't
the-
come
yes.
cheap. They don't
So-
come cheap.
I thought that was, yeah, I thought that was in, yeah, okay.
No, so the necessities list will tell you how much you're increasing your budget from what you already have here,
Right.
right? So this, we just kind of take it down. What are we adding to the budget? This is what we're asking to add this fiscal year, including the 10% that the health insurance is going to increase. On the 10% is, we normally go out to bid to see how the market looks like. Right now, the recommendation is being not to go out to bid because it's gonna be more than 10% based on the utilization that we have used in the last couple of years. So if we stay the same, they're looking at 10%. We haven't gotten a concrete number. We should have it by the next budget workshop, which is on July 22nd, of exactly what that percentage is. Right, so that's under the health insurance, and then we're also wanting your recommendation on the cost of living, if you all want to give one to the employees.
So it's about 100,000 for this new position,
Yes.
just so you guys know?
Yeah.
And that's including medical or that's extra? medical and,
Well, fringe benefits are included within, but, so 58,000 is going to be added to the salary that's already there for the city auditor, just the job description is changing. Right, but yes, it's a range from 90 to maybe 110.
okay.
And that's the job market out there. If you're going any lower than that, you're not gonna get anyone employed. Just like we're not seeing any potential candidates for our city auditor position. We would have loved to leave the financial analyst and add the deputy city manager. Unfortunately, finances are not allowing us to do that.
Sure. Mr. Garcia?
Mr. Castellano, appreciate, it's awesome. Are we healthy? Are we gonna be healthy?
We are healthy now, we will continue to be healthy, yes. Unless, of course, you do a 27% COLA, and then, not that I'm recommending that.
Wink, wink.
I'm gonna recommend a 8% COLA for our staff. That's at 560,000, right?
Yes.
Is that feasible? Is that,
It's feasible, but, you know, keep in mind, you know, overall, we're only allowed to increase 3.5%.
We have to take it to the voters.
That's going to
Take it to
put
the
us into
voters.
the reserves, probably more than I'm comfortable with. But, you know, you may be okay with it.
so what is your recommendation for the
I-
COLA?
You know, for the COLA, I have vacillated between the 2 and the 3. I would probably go with the 3. It's just, you know, it seems fairly fair. You know, the El Paso area is famous for not being included in the booms, but we also don't participate in the busts. And so, you know, our economy is fairly level overall, but inflation has been nasty, especially at the lower spectrum. And so a 3% would be fair at this point in time, since we are limited to about 3.5%. 8% is gonna, you know, is gonna push it a little bit. And, you know, that's kind of where I'm at on that. But, you know, if you want, we could look at the 8% and see what that does. But again, you know, probably to offset that, we're gonna cut somewhere else as well.
Cut someone, sorry?
Cut somewhere else. One of the things, if you look at the budget, could you put the expenses back up? I meant to mention this. And this is really difficult to do with our chief of police, because he likes to buy things. But the thing is, the poor man was trying to buy stuff and couldn't get it in, you know. So it was the craziest of times. The combined, I'm sorry. My bad.
So before Mr. Reta pulls that up, I just want you all to know that it's a very competitive world out there to even attract personnel. We have had vacant positions.
And retain for that
And
matter.
like the police department and every agency around us is a 30% higher than us. That's why we see a high turnover in our police department, because they tend to go to other departments because they're paying 30%. We looked at the budget. Unfortunately, 30% is just not doable, right? So we're looking at a 16-cent decrease, which is still an increase because of the evaluations and the growth that we're seeing, right? But it's kind of, we're just living, so unfortunately for us, the city can't grow the way it's growing with staff, meaning we're understaffed, right? So much growth, and you really only have 24, 25 employees covering your whole city in public works. And then your police department is also, our calls have increased. Unfortunately, we're not able to add any of those positions because we just don't feel comfortable. But I do want you to keep in mind is that it's a very competitive world out there, right? And the Social Security Administration did give an 8.7, I think, cost of living. I think that's where the 8% is coming from. So just for you all to know is that the reason we have a high turnover or we're not able to fill positions is just because we're not competitive enough.
Mrs. Duarte, what do you suggest as a COLA? I know. As a responsible,
Correct, right? So that's my responsibility. I'm gonna side with Mr. Charlie, right? Because I've always have, and I think that, however, Mr. Charlie's very conservative, right? Which we love. And I think that we've been very successful. However, we're, like he said, can we do it? Yes. The 8%. Do we feel comfortable with it? No. And also understand that the TRZ is really the factor here that's limiting us, right? So that doesn't mean that the city's just being responsible and saying, hey, we have a project, we're allocating funding. But because of the Socorro logistics, I mean, we're, like he said, to the RMA, we've already paid $3 million. That's there that we've received through the TRZ. And that's going to continue to grow, but it's only going to go to the TRC. We can't use it as maintenance and operations. However, it is maintenance and operations because you are building a road. Does that make sense? Like, it's not that we're not growing, we're growing, but you're being responsible because you are allocating funding for a project that you have on the books, right? Which is a more realistic site that, yes, this project's gonna get done, as opposed to doing away with the TRZ, and how are we gonna pay for this project?
Mr. Castillo, can I ask you for a chart that shows us the?
It's real easy. I'm going to tell you how to do it. It's a little bit of algebra, though.
Okay.
Okay, you ready? We got about $7 million in payroll. Okay? So whatever percentage you want to add to
it.
that. Yeah. And so at 3%, it's 210. So it's about $70,000 increments. At 4%, it's 280,000. 5%, it's 350,000. If you want to look at the increment between 3 and 8, you know, make us look bad. Go ahead. It's not going to hurt our feelings. If you want to look at 5, or, you know, somewhere in between.
Okay, so my priority is making sure the city is healthy.
Yes.
And I really want to make sure that we take care and retain our employees.
Yes.
So, you know, it's hard because, you know.
Well, you're not going to please everybody.
Right.
And that's just it. And that's the weight of your responsibility as being on the council.
So I'm going to ask for a 4% raise for
Okay.
COLA.
All right?
I know it's a little in between, but I want to make sure that our employees feel something and make sure they know that we're still trying to take care of them. And hopefully with the boom comes
Yes. Yeah.
later.
Mr. Nevares?
And I completely understand that. We're going through the same
Sure, yes.
problem at work. But the biggest thing here, folks, is to attract and retain, okay? We're wasting a lot more money in training, having them here for a year or two, and then they're gone. Understand that, because this rotation will cost eventually a lot more.
Well, it's costing a lot of labor hours for the training,
Yes.
right? So now you have 2 people tied up, which in turn it is costing the city money to keep up with that overturn.
Ms. Villalobos?
On the 4% COLA, do we have to go to do we have to get it voted in, or as long as we?
We don't have to
majority-
take it to the voters. No, it's just part of the budget itself.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha,
So,
gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
so the 4% is not asking to increase the 60 cents, right? We're being very conservative, and we want to go with what is being recommended, which is the 60%. However, we're at 76 cents right now on property taxes. going down to 60 cents, right? So it's gonna break us even, I think it's like $400,000 difference on your budget?
Yes, yes.
So, just per se, on somebody's budget of, I don't know, let's just say 42,000,
Okay.
okay? At 4%. What is that?
What
looking
is
like?
that?
Yeah, the increase looking.
If I had a calculator, I'd
Okay.
have it for
Just,
you, but I
just
don't
do the
trust my
42
brain anymore.
times the 4%
1,680, 1,680.
yearly.
Yes.
Just,
Divided by 12. That's $140 extra in their paycheck,
Monthly.
monthly.
Monthly, but we pay bi-weekly.
I'm sorry, you pay
We
what?
pay bi-weekly.
Bi-weekly,
Wait,
so it'd be 80.
yeah.
So you divide it
No,
by
no.
26.
I got it. I just, for those that are viewing and trying to keep up with us, you know, what
Okay.
are we looking at a, you know, 42,000 salary?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct, so based on the 7 million that we have on operational cost, if you were to do the 8%, it would be $560,000 added to your budget. If you do the 4%, that's 280 that you're adding,
That just doubles.
right? And then also understand that we're adding 10% to our health insurance. A minimum of 10%. We will have a more concrete number on our next meeting.
On top of the 4, we're adding the, it would be an additional for the health benefit for the tick. I see a concern, Ms. Rodarte. I see a small
No,
concern.
I think, again, I think that we're very healthy.
And if we can't,
I think the concern comes from Mr. Charlie because he's very conservative.
Yes.
But always understand that every fiscal year, we never use our entire revenues that we allocate for. That's why you always see us doing our budget amendments and you always see a decrease.
Decrease.
And even at the end, we still don't use what we said we were gonna use. So we've been very successful in the way we spent money. So I think you're very healthy, and like Mr. Charlie says, we will continue to be healthy because the city's growing. Our sales tax are growing. And that's just only the beginning. I mean, we really haven't seen, a lot of the new subdivisions haven't hit our budget that you'll be able to see every year.
Right.
However, this House bill, the Senate bill, does really hinder us, because what other small city is seeing the growth that we're seeing,
nobody.
right? So it's not made for every city. However, it is protecting your taxpayers, right? It's wanting other cities not to take advantage. What we need to understand is that we're not growing with them, and unfortunately, we're not being able to keep the talent just because we're so far behind.
And we have to understand, we're living in different times because of COVID. Everything went up. You know, those incentive checks that everybody received, and if you had family, you continued to receive, then the whole world decided to increase double or triple their products. And, but our salaries didn't increase. Our elderly's SSI did not increase. And that's what I hear a lot. It didn't increase, but my property taxes went up, and how do I
Everything
pay for
else.
them?
Everything else?
Yeah,
And those are the conversations that happen, when employees come and say, hey, we're struggling, like, is there anything we can do? But wait till budget time and we'll see what can we work out. But, fortunate for us, unfortunate for you, you're the ones that make those tough decisions, right? We follow whatever it is that you're, and that's one of your main roles, right, is allowing us to be able to spend. We just want to paint a very clear picture
right.
so that you all understand.
So
Mr. Garcia-
you're feeling the 4% then?
Yeah.
Well,
Mr. Garcia?
sorry, it's hard. It is. As an educator, I can tell you that we look forward to these kind of things, and I have the power, we have the power to do that, to make people's lives better. And that's where we're at right now, and we want to retain people, and and that's the biggest part. We've been good every year. We've been healthy every year since I've been here in 2017. we're gonna continue to be healthy, one way or another. We do have reserves,
And we need to share the wealth.
and we need to make sure that we do have a plan for infrastructure this year, and we added that to the budget for sidewalks for all our districts. I just believe that we need to make sure we take care of our people, and that was one of the biggest things that I wanted to make sure. And when people complain about the lights, when people complain about the parks, when people complain about weeds, when people complain about roads, who do we turn to? We turn to the city manager and we say, help us. And then she goes, well, we don't have that. We don't have that. We don't have the people. So I'm gonna rescind what I did right now, and I'm gonna say 8%. And Mr. Castellano will help us stay healthy, as he's always done. Cassiano, I'm so sorry,
Como
sir.
italiano, hey. What's the matter with you?
Because let me tell you, the phone calls don't stop, and we all know it. The phone calls don't stop. And what do we? And then we have to tell them we don't have the people. Well, maybe this is a way and a path to say we don't have the people. And trust me, I don't like seeing new people here. Not in a bad way, but when we have to deal with somebody who's new, and we have to okay, this new person, this new person, this new person. If we can retain the people we have, that we look at the extravaganzas we have. Look at the way the meetings go now. We don't have technical issues. We don't have, And I think when we become, and our council's doing great. I just believe that if we take care of people, they will take care of us, and they will take care of our citizens. So I'm gonna go with 8% at $560,000, and Mr. Castellano will help us make sure to cut wherever he needs to cut. I just don't want to cut people, but I want to cut or not fill vacancies. And I hope that everybody agrees or doesn't, and that's fine, that's your opinion, but I believe that when the phone calls come, and I know there's phone calls, because I've had phone calls where like, my light, and when you get that phone call, for whatever you did, thank you for my light.
Yeah.
And I know that's my staff, our staff. And if we can retain them, and we can, and it's hard to retain them, I'm not sure what happens, but, being somebody who's able to make people's lives better, I think that is a true honor, and I'm gonna go with 8% for our employees.
And I second that motion.
Ms. Villalobos?
I agree with Mr. Garcia. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. And we'll be able to tell if we can retain because of the increase. We'll be able to tell. Next budget, if it's something that, didn't even work, and wherever we're at, we can always readjust. But kind of like a pilot program to see how, if we can, retain our employees more, that they can stay here and that we can be competitive. Because I'm sure HR goes through all this all the time. I'm sure of it. Thank you.
I just have a comment.
And Mr.
Remember
Morales?
how when folks come up, and those with, I guess, less of a notion as to how this works, always throw I pay taxes. I
Right.
pay my taxes. But with growth comes
Growing pains.
everything else, right? We need to help these folks that throw that card, help them understand what it entails, okay? And this is part of it. 8%, he'll figure something out to reduce somewhere along the way, but it's healthy, and it will attract and retain. Trust me, folks, I deal with this every single day, and you will spend a lot more training people. To lose them 3 a year from now, it will cost you a lot more. So really think about it, and it will help retain our current employees.
Mayor?
I think Mr. Reyes was next. Just got a question for Mr. Casiano, and I agree with council. Also, if we could give more, I think council would like to give them 10, 20, 30%. As far as the 8%, would we see drastic cuts and certain,
Well,
Amounts or-
one of the things I was going to point out to you, and I forgot to, is if you look at the schedule that's up there, line 05810, property and equipment, you can see where we've gone from as high as 1.3 million. To this year, we're only looking at 384,000 of
42%.
of property equipment that we're going to buy through the general fund.
Yeah, see?
Now, we have other
Radio
resources.
Communications as well.
We have other resources, we have the, capital funds still available, and, we can we always think, well, can ARPA pay for this, And that's what we're gonna just do, going forward, if we do the 8%. And we may look at that, and we may look at some of the other things that we're wanting to do and say, well, maybe next year. Because this year, we're gonna do the 8%, well, maybe next year we can do some of the other stuff, because we know we're gonna continue to grow. All you gotta do is drive around Socorro, and there's another here, there's something there's something there, and Socorro Logistics hasn't even gotten started yet, and then when you do Nuevo Waco Tanks Road all the way to Alameda, everything on those sides, they're in the TRZ, of course, but still, when the TRZ is done, all that money is gonna start going into the general fund. So, 5-6 years from now, it's gonna be flush again, so.
And just talking about that, the Socorro Logistics is one of the months we received the sales tax. And it was a huge increase that we even called the comptroller, like, hey, did you guys add like another zero? And no, it was Socorro Logistics that, it's not even open, but it's already generating you money. During the sales tax and property taxes, it makes an impact, but that's for your Nuevo Hueco Tanks Road extension.
Ms. Villalobos?
I just wanted to add to Mr. Nevares' comment. I get those all the time. We pay taxes, we pay taxes. I have a chart that I forward them where it shows exactly how much taxes they pay. I always say about $60 of for every 1,000 that your property is valued, the city of Socorro gets about $60. They think 100%, most
Goes to
stays
the
here.
city.
And when I show them, you see where it says Socorro? That's what Socorro receives.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they don't receive it because they're delinquent. So we're dealing with that too. And then, of course, our people become elderly, and that gets reduced.
Yeah.
So we take all that into consideration, but 100% of your taxes do not stay here. And they appreciate that because they didn't know how to read it. They've never known.
And that's what I meant, we need to
Yes.
help them
Yes,
understand this,
Right.
we need to help educate them.
yes,
But-
that's
Yeah,
been.
if you
It
look
comes
at the
with growth.
statement, if you look at the statement for a citizen of Socorro, the very first line says City of Socorro.
Yeah.
But that's not the big line. No, it's the school district.
Exactly.
Yeah, all that
I get
other
a lot of those calls
But
as well.
They don't get past the City of Socorro.
Yeah.
It's very expensive.
See?
Yeah. I
I-
tell
I-
them we don't share our taxes, they don't share their taxes, we don't share our taxes with them, they're a different entity.
Right.
They're separate
Exactly.
from us,
Yeah.
they think we're the ones that are charging that amount.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a tough one to get over. Yeah,
Over,
it really
yes.
is, yeah.
Alrighty.
Okay, we have a second?
We do have a
Mr.
second.
Nevares?
So would this motion be to consider the 8%, the necessities list, and a 10% increase on the insurance?
No,
Yes.
Okay, Ruben Reyes is absent. Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia.
Aye.
Rudy Cruz is absent. And Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
And I'm sure he'll say yes when he comes back.
Motion to delete 7 through 9?
We don't have any.
Oh, consent agenda, do we have a motion?
Motion to delete 7, 8, and 9.
Second.
No, we
Ruben.
have to do consent agenda
Yeah.
first.
Yes.
Motion, so,
Motion, consent agenda first?
motion to
approve?
do consent agenda?
Second.
Ruben Reyes.
yes.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia.
Aye.
Rudy Cruz is absent. And Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion to delete 7 through 9?
Motion to delete 7 through 9?
Second.
Ruben Reyes.
Yes.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia.
Aye.
Rudy Cruz is absent. And Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Ruben Reyes.
Yes.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia.
Aye.
Rudy Cruz is absent, and Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Meeting adjourns at 9 a.m. Have a great day.